Good evening. This is Jill Garrison. I'm the genealogy coordinator at the Frankfort Community Public Library. And tonight's presentation is gearing up for the release of the 1950 census. We are going to talk about some background information for the census. We're going to go through the form for the 1950 census and the questions that are on there. We're also going to talk about the indexing process, and then we're going to talk about how you can locate the enumeration district for your ancestors before the census is indexed, because um, initially we won't be able to search for them by name. So we'll have to search for them by location, and we'll need the enumeration district to do that. Okay. So here we go. So who took the census? Over 151 million people took the 1950 census, including armed forces, crews on vessels at sea, employees of the United States government and their families living abroad, those living in U.S. territories such as Alaska and Hawaii. They were territories in 1950. American Samoa, Guam, Puerto Rico, the Canal Zone, and the Virgin Islands, as well as some other smaller territories. They really made a concerted effort during the 1950 census to get everybody. So even if you were on a ship at sea, they tried to make sure that you were counted. When was the census taken? Census Day in 1950 was April 1st. Now, that doesn't mean that they got everybody counted on the first day of April. That was when it started. And they had about a month to complete the census. And then when is it released? It's released April 1st, 2022. So there is a 72-year gap between when the census is taken and when it is released to the public. And we're going to talk about why we have that gap. I've heard before, I don't know if you've heard, but I've always been told that it's because that's about the lifespan. You know, when the rule was made, that was about the average lifespan of people. And so you weren't going to find yourself in a census until it wasn't going to be there during your lifetime, that you wouldn't find yourself in a census. But that's not exactly correct. So in 1935, the National Archives and Records Administration, commonly called NARA, was formed. In 1942, the Census Bureau transferred the census records to NARA, and NARA made the census records up to 1870 available to the public. And the reason why they chose to make all the censuses up to that point available to the public is because those censuses were taken without any guarantee of privacy. The census taker would take the census, and then after they were done, they would post it at the courthouse, and people could go to the courthouse and look over the census taker's records and make changes to it if something was incorrect. So anybody in your county could come and look at your information on the census up, for every time that was taken up to 1870. After 1870, that was not the case, that it was not made available to the public. It was just sent to the Census Bureau. In 1952, there was an exchange of letters between the director of the Bureau of the Census, and the archivist of the United States, in which NARA agreed to make census data available to the public for the purpose of research and genealogy after 72 years had lapsed since the taking of the census. So that's when that rule was made. The Census Bureau transferred the 1950 census to NARA in 1952, and NARA made the 1880 census public because 72 years had lapsed since that census was taken. In 1978, Congress made that 72-year rule a law. So it is the law that the census cannot be released until 72 years after it has been taken. So now we're going to start looking at the actual form for the 1950 census. In the first section, we see the questions for the head of household. And the first thing is the street name, and it would be written along the side of the form, just like we've seen in previous censuses. And then next to it, we have the spot for the house and apartment number. So you see here, there's a dotted line. The house number would go at the top, and if there is an apartment number, it would go underneath the house number. Then the next column is the serial number of the dwelling, and that is just the order in which the census taker comes to your household. It's it's different. It's not a number that's assigned to your house. It just has to do with what number they were going around and visiting. So if you were the first person they came to visit, then you're number 1. If you're the 10th person, then your house number is number 10. The next column 4, has this house. Is this house on a farm or a ranch? So they answer yes or no. And then if it's not a house, a farm or a ranch, they want to know if it's on a lot, or if it has 3 acres with it or more. This is a time when people are starting to move out into the suburbs. And so there are houses that are being built that are on large tracts of land, relatively large, but yet there hasn't been development around them yet. And then the next column 6, is where the census taker would put the number for your agricultural questionnaire if you're a farmer or rancher and had to fill that out. The next section is questions for all persons. So this is in section 7 is where the name of the head of household would go, as well as the name of all of the other people who live there. They wanted to know who was living in that house on April 1st. So if you were away at college, or you're out, or you're in the military and you're not living in the house, they didn't want you counted for that household. You're going to show up. You're going to be counted where you live. The next column is 8, and that is the relationship to the head of house, just like we've seen before. And then section 9, they had a section for race, and it gives the different abbreviations that they wanted the census taker to use. And then after, in section 10, we have sex, male or female. Let's see. And then, let's see, trying to make sure I got everything. Then we have marital status, and then foreign country. If you were born in a foreign country, they wanted to know what country you were born in. If you were born in the United States, they wanted to know what state you were born in. In section 14, they wanted to know if you were naturalized or not. It was a yes or no question. If you hadn't completed the process, then it was no. Also, they wanted to know if you were if you were born to American parents and abroad. The next section is for people who are 14 years and older, and all of this applies to your work. So in section 15, they wanted to know what you did the most the week before. Were you working? Were you keeping house? Or was it something else? And section 16, if this person didn't work at all last week, uh, or if you put H, which is for keeping house, or OT for other, it says, did this person work at all last week? And not including working around the house. Section 17, if you answered no, that you didn't work at all last week, were you looking for work? So they want to know if you're looking for work. Section 17, if or section 18, if you said no, you're not looking for work, do you have a job? So, maybe you were taking a vacation or sick or something the week before and you didn't work. Do you have a job? Section 19, if you're said that you were working in line 15, how many hours did you work in the last week? Then when we get over to section 20A, they want to know what your occupation is. They have some interesting, I think the first one is interesting, nails, heels on shoe. So they want to know what your occupation is. And then 20B, what industry are you working in? And 20C, what is the class of worker? Are you private worker? Are you working for a private employer? Are you working for the government? Do you own your business? Or are you working without pay on a farm or some other uh, job? Now, if you see these numbers over here, number 4 and number 9, the people who the person listed on line number 4 gets to answer extra questions, and the person listed on line number 9 get to answer extra question. On each sheet, there were 6 people that they asked extra questions of, and they call those sample questions. So on top of all of the questions that they've just answered, then they're going to answer some more questions. So if your family member happens to be one of these people, then the then you get additional information, more than the basic information that everyone else has filled out. The interesting thing was with these sheets, they didn't pick the same line numbers every time to fill out the extra questions. So on the next sheet, it might be number 3 and number 10 and so on. I don't know why they did that, but that's what they did. So so the person on line number 4 would have to answer number 21. Was he living in the same house last year? Was he, and then number 22, was he living on a farm a year ago? If he answered uh, no to 21. And then if he answered no to 21, was he living in the same county a year ago? So it's more information about where they live. And sometimes that can be very helpful for those of us who have a hard time finding our relatives to know. And if they answered no to 23, that they were not living in the same county as a year ago, they want to know what county and state he was living in. And that's what they're filling out in section 24A. And then if it was, and even if it was a different country, they're going to write that down. So then, like we've seen on previous census records, in 25 of the sample questions, they want to know where the father was born and where the mother was born. They want to know what the highest grade of school was that the person attended, and did that person finish that grade? And then they also want to know, for those who are under 30 years of age, if they had attended school since February 1st. So there's 3 different places to check there: yes, no, and over 30. They don't care if you attended school if you're over 30. Okay. And then there are additional sample questions for those who are uh, 14 years of age and over, because these are more questions that have to do with work. It says, if the person is looking for work, if they said up above on in 17 that they were looking for work, how many weeks has he been looking for work? Number 30, section 30, last year, how many weeks did this person do any work at all, not counting working around the house? And then we're getting into the section that has to do with income. It says last year, that's 1949, how much money did he earn as an employee for wages or salary? And then 31, that's 31A. And 31B, how much money did he earn working for his own, in his own business? And then 31C, how much did he earn from interest, dividends, veterans allowance, pensions, rents, or other income? Uh, Quite a few people would feel that those questions are pretty intrusive. They're asking all these questions about income. And then for 32 A, B, and C, they're asking those same questions in regard to the rest of the household. So if the wife works or the children work, or lodgers or anybody else working in that house, they're asking those same questions. How much money did they make from working a salary, their own business, or interest and dividends? Then we get to over to 33, and they're wanting to know about military service. Did the person serve in World War II, World War I, or at another time, or are they serving currently? Now, these are extra sample questions. So the person who is on 29 for this form fills out, answers these questions. And it's just for if they're over 14 years of age, um, because otherwise these aren't going to apply to them. And this is a note to the enumerator down here in 34. If the person worked last year, is there any information about their work? If not, then they need to fill out these number 35, A, B, and C, which are, what kind of job, industry, and class of worker they were. Then if they are married, and number 36, has the person been married more than once? And then 37, they want to know how long that person has had their current marital status. So if they're married, maybe this is their second marriage, they want to know how long you've been married in this second marriage. If you're widowed, how long have you been widowed? If you're divorced, how long have you been divorced? Separated, how long have you been separated? And then 38, it says if the person is female and has ever been married, widowed, divorced, or separated, how many children does she have that were born? And it doesn't include stillborn children. So those are all the questions. And that is just the questions on the population form. There was also an agricultural form. There was a housing form. But usually when we're looking at census records, we're looking at that population information. There were also different forms for different territories. And there for Puerto Rico, they had the form in Spanish. So that is the main form that we looked at today, the population. It's the P1 form, but there were other forms that went along with the 1950 census. And if you want to see those forms, you can go to the Census Bureau's website. The website is included in the handout that we sent in that last email with a Zoom link. So you can go there and you can look at all the different forms that were used during the 1950 census. In 1940, when they indexed the census, Ancestry outsourced their indexing to some Asian countries. And that might explain some things to you. Why sometimes the index, you can't find your ancestors. Now with their crowdsourcing of making corrections and stuff, you probably can find your ancestors in the 1940 census pretty easily. But initially, you might have had some trouble because you had non-native English speakers who were doing the transcribing of the names. Family Search, on the other hand, enlisted over 163,000 volunteers and several genealogical organizations to do their indexing for them. They had as a goal, both Ancestry and Family Search had as a goal that they would get their indexing done in 6 months. They thought it would take them 6 months. Family Search got everything indexed except for Puerto Rico in 4 months. And Ancestry finished a few weeks later. So it was a huge effort, and they got it done relatively quickly. This year, with the 1950 census, they're going to approach indexing differently. With the 1950 census, Ancestry and Family Search are working together. Ancestry will use AI, artificial intelligence, handwriting recognition technology to index the census. They've been working on developing that for quite some time. And then Family Search is going to organize volunteers who will check the software's accuracy. So they're going to check and see how accurate it was. And volunteers will be checking records that hold personal meaning for them. And with the 1940 census, you were assigned a certain chunk and you just went through and you transcribed the names. That's the way Family Search did it. But they realized that people are going to take it more seriously and do a better job when that what they're doing means something to them. So if you're doing your family members and their neighbors, or maybe I grew up in Warren Township here in Clinton County, so maybe I would do all of Warren Township. So there you can sign up, and based on what's still available, they will give you suggestions. Maybe they would suggest that I do all the garrisons in Indiana. So that's how they're handling indexing this time around. And it'll be interesting to see how well that handwriting recognition technology does at reading the handwriting. And it will be interesting also to see how long it takes. Will they get it done in less than 4 months this time? We'll see. So in the meantime, since the census won't be released until April 1st, and also since the index will not be done right away, because both Ancestry and Family Search do not have access to the census before you or I have access to it. So they don't have access to it before April 1st either. So what we need to do if we want to be able to search the census before it's indexed is we need to know exactly where our ancestors were living in 1950, or as close to 1950 as we can. So there are some things that you might have at home that you can check and see if you can find an address for your ancestors in around that time between 1940 and 1950. You can check address books. I when I have family members that want to toss old address books, I'm like, oh, give that to me. I might need to know where those people were living. So don't toss those old address books. Keep a hold of them. And so you can check address books. You can check letters if you have letters from them that you have kept or that other family members have kept. Diaries might have where they were living. Scrapbooks. You can talk to relatives. If you're looking for someone who's still alive, if you're going to be looking for them in the 1950 census, you can say, where were you living in 1950? So those are all things that you can do to help you to help you find the address. If you can't find their address from things that you have at home, then you can check records. You can look on vital records. You can look birth certificates, marriage certificates, and death certificates. A really good place to look is city directories. So if you can find them in the city directory. because those were published, every year, every other year. So, you should be able to get fairly close if you can find them in a city directory. Employment records, and newspapers. Um, Now you wouldn't probably find someone's address in a newspaper, but in the past, they had no problem saying so and so from such and such a street or whatever. So that would help you locate their address. Social security records. And if nothing else, you can look on the 1940 census. At least that gets you within, 10 years of uh, the 1950 census. So once you know where your ancestor was living in 1950, or as close to 1950 as you can get, then what you want to do is you want to find their enumeration district numbers. The way you do that is you use the Unified 1950 Census ED Finder on the One Step web pages by Stephen P. Morse. And the URL is up there. It's also on your handout. So you see the arrow pointing to that tool. That is what you're going to look at. When you open the website, there's a long list of links, and it just takes you to various tools and things that help you with different things with genealogy research. There's also a drop. There's also a drop down box on the side, and you can choose census, or you can just scroll down till you get to the U.S. Census and see what you see there on your screen. When you open that up, it's going to look like this. And I put in my grandparents' address. So we have in Indiana, they lived in Indiana, Clinton County. They lived in Frankfort, and they lived for the house number 1509, and it was South Clay Street. But this tool doesn't have a distinction between South and North, so you just choose Clay Street. And when you do that, then down at the bottom, you see the arrow down at the bottom. It has different enumeration districts that can possibly be the one that you're looking for. And we don't want to have to go through all of those enumeration districts. I don't want to have to page through all of those to find my grandparents and my dad should be listed in their household. I don't want to go through all of those. I want to narrow it down to just one. So you see there an arrow says see Google Map. So we're going to narrow this down even more. So I clicked on the see Google Maps and brought that up so I can see the location of where they live, because I want to look at the surrounding streets. So we have Elmwood Drive to the south and Ann Street to the north. And then we have Alhambra Avenue over there on the west. So then I put in as a street that crossed Clay Street that is close as Ann Street. Now, Elmwood Drive was not on there. Evidently, they don't put in drives, it's just streets. And when I put in Ann Street to restrict it in size, then I get one enumeration district, the 1213. Now, the 12 is the county number. So if you're aware of what the county number is for the location that you're looking for, that's what that stands for. And then so it's enumeration district within county 12. And then down below, you see in a box, it says clicking on a 1950 ED number above will display. And so it says census pages. When the census is available, when it's made public, you will be able to go straight from this tool to the census pages by selecting that and hitting more details. Now, if you do that, it's just going to take you to a message that says this is not available yet. So, and it's always good to double check and make sure that you filled out the form correctly. So I selected um, the ED description because I wanted to make sure that I got the right location. And I clicked on that, and this is what I got. It's a description of that enumeration district. So it's Center Township, Frankfort, Ward 4, and it's bounded by Armstrong on the north and the city limits on the east and south, and Jackson Street, Main Avenue, and Main Street on the west. And that fits that area where my grandparents lived. Now, not all of our relatives live in town or in a city. So we also want to be able to find the enumeration districts for our relatives that live out in the country. And um, if you look for those relatives in the city directory, they're going to be in the back in the county gazetteer, and it's going to say rural route 2 or rural route 1 or whatever as their address, and that's uh, not going to help you street location. They didn't have the 911 addresses like we do today. So, and I thought this would be more difficult at finding the enumeration district for my rural ancestors, but that wasn't the case. It's actually easier. So I decided my other grandparents, my grandma and grandpa Crum, they lived out in Warren Township, close to Beard, and I thought, well, I'll see what the enumeration district would be for them. So I put in Indiana, and then under county, Clinton, and then instead of choosing a city or town, even though they're rural route to Frankfort, I don't want to choose Frankfort because they're not in Frankfort. So you choose other, and then you type in either the township or community or institution where they lived. And I put in Warren Township because they lived in Warren Township. I also put in Beard, and I got the same thing. So for them, I have the enumeration district is 1237. So that when the census records are released, I can go to the enumeration district 12 for Indiana 1237 and see Grandma and Grandpa Crumb's address or their census returns, and I can go to 1213 and I can see Grandma and Grandpa Garrison's uh, census returns. So after you've done that, you are ready for the release. Whether you don't have to uh, wait until it's indexed, you can go ahead and you can find your ancestors before it is indexed. And up here we have my contact details. If you need to email me, call me. Um, if you have any questions, if there's any way that we can help you with your genealogy research, or if you need some help using the tools that we talked about. Then we also have our website, and we have a genealogy and local history page on our website. So if you haven't checked that out, go ahead and do so. So I am done with the presentation. I want to thank you all for coming tonight. Do we have any questions? Is there anything I went over too fast and I need to go over again?
There's a question in the chat.
Okay, let's see.
What is the website again to enter the info for the ED?
Okay, so the website for finding the enumeration district is Steve Morse, MORSE.org, and I can go back to that. Oh, went too far. So it's right there, stevemorse.org. Since we got a little bit extra time, I could go over the handout too. If we
And I also had a question.
Okay, go ahead.
So on the census portion where it's asking about children,
Mm-hmm.
it specifies like married women, widowed women, divorced women. What if the child was born out of wedlock? Are those just not
They don't
counted?
count. That's why I said evidently you don't count them.
Oh, so those just were allowed to be little secrets.
I guess I noticed that when I was looking at that form. I told Dennis, I said, it doesn't say anything else about, it. What about the ones that were born, before? And he goes, well, it was 1950. I said, well, it happened then too.
Yeah, no, definitely happened before then. That's why I can't find my family tree very far back.
So you're having trouble because of that situation?
Oh yes, poor Johannes.
Okay. I'm trying to find. Aha, there we go. So can you see this is the handout. Can you see it? Oh, I haven't hit share. I got to hit by Stephen Morris, and the Census Bureau website, Family Search website, the familysearch.org/1950 census. That's a really good site to go and to learn more about the 1950 census. And then there's the National Archives website. You can learn all kinds of information about it, and then they will also be making the census public on their website as well. The National Archives also has a series of programs that they are doing leading up to the 1950 to the release of the 1950 census. And so under programs, I have the URL for the calendar for those programs. So I don't know if I'll have an opportunity to take advantage of those, but if you get a chance, take advantage of those. And then if you want to volunteer, the Family Search website is where you need to go. in order to volunteer. And as soon as that is, as soon as it's made public, then you can get your assignment and you can help with the indexing process. Any other questions? Okay, well, if we don't have any more questions, then I want to thank you for being with us tonight. And we did record this session. So we will, after Allison has had time to edit it, we will make it available on our YouTube account so you can find it again. And we will also send the link to the YouTube video to you if you would like to watch it again, if there's something you forgot or you couldn't quite remember. I did a virtual conference last week, and a couple of the programs. In preparing for this, I went back and watched portions of the presentations and preparation as I was putting this together. So, well, thank you very much and have a good evening.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Any other questions? Okay, well, if we don't have any more questions, then I want to thank you for being with us tonight. And we did record this session. So we will, after Allison has had time to edit it, we will make it available on our YouTube account so you can find it again. And we will also send the link to the YouTube video to you if you would like to watch it again, if there's something you forgot or you couldn't quite remember. I did a virtual conference last week, and a couple of the programs. In preparing for this, I went back and watched portions of the presentations and preparation as I was putting this together. So, well, thank you very much and have a good evening.